Good morning, everyone. This is Heather Cooper with Playing with Paper Crafting. Just coming on about a minute early to get organized for my regular Monday morning live. I'm excited for this morning because I get to show you my very favorite technique. And it's been my favorite for a long time. I don't know if it's because I really like pastels or if it's because it just really looks pretty and it's fun to do. Not sure. Anyway, Monday morning, it's International Women's Day today, so let's celebrate sisters. Yeah. Today I'm using the Simply Succulents Bundle. This is the stamp set that I'm going to be using, and it is in the January to June Mini Catalogue. It is on page 39. So there's the Simply Succulents stamp set and the potted succulents dies that go along with it. So the dies die cut the outlines of the stamps and the sentiments, but they also give you a few extra dies as well. So it's quite a fun set. Yeah, so I've used it a few times and I've been really happy with the results I've had. But today we're going to do the whitewash technique. And this is the whitewash technique that you're seeing right here. And it involves using the craft ink, which you may not use all that often. But our craft ink, I've got the refill here, and I have the ink pad, but I'm really going to just use it straight from the refill right here. It involves using our Stampin' Right markers, which since the blends came out you may not use all that often, but I'm going to put them to good use with this. It involves using a water painter or an aqua painter, and I'm kind of old-fashioned. I really like our old aqua painters, so I'm going to be using one of those, although the water painters will do just as well. And a good old-fashioned blender pen, which again you may not have used for a while. So maybe we should just get started. All right, so we're going to start with some thick Whisper White, or I guess it's basic white now. I'm still getting rid of my Whisper White. So we've got half a sheet of thick basic white, I guess we could say, and it's scored at 4 1/4 inches. By the way, when I post this video on my blog, all the measurements you'll find on my blog today, which is Playing with Paper Crafting, www.playingwithpapercrafting.com. Okay, so we'll just make sure our edges are even here and give it a nice burnish with my bone folder. Okay, then on another sheet of 5 1/2 by 4 1/4 thick basic white, I took the potted succulent dies, and there are lots of them. There's 2 sheets of them here. I took the big one and I die cut one of these. I've already done that because I didn't want this video to take up forever. So this is the result of that die cut. And we're going to glue it onto our card front. So I'm just going to put these aside for now and come back to them when we need them later. For that, I'm going to use my Tombow glue, my liquid multi-purpose liquid glue, and I shake it down so that the glue is in the tip, and then I just want the very thin bead of glue around the edge, the border here. Okay, and then I'm just going to look for a few thick join areas around the inside here to just add some daubs of glue just to help it stay down. When I add the elements of the card, that will help it stay down as well, but just a little extra would be good. I don't want to take too long at that because otherwise the glue around the edge will get too dry. Okay, and then we're going to add it right to card front, so I'm going to match up the top here. By the way, there's no real top or bottom, it's just what you choose. And the Tombow gives you a minute or two to just set that up, okay? So that's our card front, and we're just going to set that aside for a moment or two, or well, actually more than a moment, because it's going to take us a while to get this done. So I'm going to take a full 5.5 by 4 1/4 sheet of crumb cake, and I find the whitewash technique always works better on crumb cake. I suppose there's a few other colors you could do it on, but I just like the look of it on crumb cake a little better. So we're going to emboss the three main images, the pot, the big succulent image, and a medium succulent image on here. So I'm first using the oil and static reducing tool, which we used to call the embossing buddy, but we no longer sell. But I'm sure you can find one or make one at a craft store. Okay, these are the images that I'm going to stamp on here. So there's the pot, the large succulent, and the medium succulent from the stamp set. So let's start with the large one. And I'm just going to turn it over and apply the Versamark ink, excuse me, on the back of it. Just get that really inked up because there's a lot of lines on there. And I want to make sure I've got room for the pail or the pot. Okay, now I just want to apply equal pressure to the middle as to the outside so that I get everything on there. And I should have time to stamp all of these before it dries too much. I'm going to put the pot up in this corner. Because of the darker cardstock, you can see where the images are without too much trouble. And then this medium one down here, the sentiment, I have another piece of crumb cake for that. So I'm going to take my white Stamp and Emboss powder here. Just going to get rid of that for a moment, get it out of the way. And I'm going to just cover this with the white embossing powder. Just make sure I've got everything covered. And now that small bloom. there. I don't know, do you call succulents blooms? Okay, so that's all of those. Now we are going to use our heat tool to heat set the images. Okay, I think we've got that. I'm just gonna cool it for a minute, and then I just want to just brush my finger over it to make sure that there's no powdery areas left, because that always makes that always spoils the effect if you get any of those where it's not completely done. All right, so now we're going to go on to the actual whitewashing part. So I'm going to take my aqua painter or the water painter. I'm just going to use my craft stamp pad. I'm just going to squeeze some re-inker in here. This is pretty thick. It's probably way more than I need. And then I want it to be quite runny. So just from my aqua painter, I'm going to add quite a bit of water to it. And then I'm just going to mix it. So I want it to be about that consistency. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add that white to my, it needs a bit more mixing there. Okay, and then I'm just going to be careful once I get to the edges, because even though I'm die cutting, I still want to respect the edges of my picture here. In the middle it doesn't matter because it's embossing. You've got enough water in there that it will dry within the boundaries of the the embossing will resist the water. You'll be able to see the lines through once it dries, even though it doesn't look like it now. Now you realize that we're painting on regular cardstock, and you have to be careful not to like overdo it. You're just pushing the water around through. This is where it's tricky on these little guys here. I just turn my brush sideways so that it's quite thin and just push the paint or the dye into those little crevices. Okay, now you've got the general idea. Once you've finished, you want to dry it. Now you can let it dry on its own, but if you're the impatient sort like I am, then you can dry it with your heat tool. And the best way to do that is on the low setting, because of course you don't want to melt your embossing powder again. Okay, so I'm just going to clean off my brush here. And probably it's a good idea to let the water flow through it again. And I have somewhere in here, I don't know where, there it is, something to dry it off with a little bit, clean it. I'm going to later run the tap over it so we get it really clean, because this craft ink doesn't come off as easily as regular ink. So I'm going to dry it on the low setting, and it takes, you have to be patient, it takes a while to really dry, but you can see it's starting to do that. And through the magic of television or video, I have a completed one here. Let's put that aside, because I knew it would take a while to finish it, and we don't want this to go on forever. So now this is one that I've whitewashed and dried, and now I'm going to show you the rest of the technique. So we're going to use our Stampin' Write markers and a blender pen for this part. And again, you don't want to overdo the working it with the blender pen, because it is you know, regular cardstock, and it's not like watercolor paper or shimmery white. So, oh, okay, I've got mint macaron. We're going to start with this big one here with that. And what I'm going to do is just at the base of every petal and around in the middle, I'm just going to add a line of the mint macaron. And if it's like underneath, I'm just going to trace the edges where it's underneath the other petals. Do you call them petals? Or are they leaves with succulents? Maybe they're leaves. You can see what I'm doing here. Okay, there's a few just to show you. I wonder if I need to get closer. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and move up here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the blender pen and just blend that in, and it mixes with the craft ink, and you get the most beautiful pastel look. And you can keep a little bit of the darker color at the base, and it just gets lighter as it works into the farther up the petal or the leaf, or whatever you call it. And we're adding just a bit of color. Very subtle, and you can clean off your blender pen. And I like to add just a tip of another color. So what I'm going to use is my Highland Heather, and on the tip of every petal or leaf, I'm just adding a dot of this Highland Heather. You know, like succulents tend to have another color on the edges of the leaves or petals. We should really come to a consensus about this. Are they leaves or are they petals? And then just work that subtle color. Let me move back up here so you can see what I'm doing. So you get that little extra tinge of a different color right on the tips of the leaves. Okay, I did mint macaron again on the pail. So on the rim, by the way, I'm using the tip, the brush tip for this, and you do get a bit of white on it, which you have to be careful to clean off afterwards. So you can, just rub it onto your paper, your scrap paper, and you might even have to rub it off a bit with your fingers. I was working on that last night to get them clean again for today. But you don't want to leave that on because again it can harden. But it does come off, so you're not harming them. And if you don't really press hard, you're less likely to get it on. Clean it off after each time. Okay, and then bring in your blender pen. And just blend that in. I'm doing where I figure that there's a bump going all the way across, a line going, it causes a shadow, and then on the outside edges to make it round, make it look round. Okay, so like so. And let's see, I used the Highland Heather for this one up here. All this area in here. It's got a bit of a stem to it. I'll just show you how that ends up looking. And you blend it in. Okay, so you can see how that looks. I used the what's it called? Soft Seafoam for this one at the side. For the one at the top, I used the mint macaron, I believe, for the edges. So I put a little dot of mint macaron at the edges. For this one, I put a little bit of the Highland Heather. No, I didn't. I used Purple Posy at the edges for that one. Because it's so light, hardly, almost doesn't look like it's there. So this one you don't want to mix in a lot because you can barely see it if you do. Very, very light. But yeah, so a little bit of this Purple Posy at the top. Anyway, I find it really soothing to do this. Some other people might find it painstaking, but for me, it's therapeutic. And then the Purple Posy I used on these little areas down here. And I didn't bother with any extra colors on them. I just used the Purple Posy. just filled them in as like that. I didn't do a whole bunch of blending on them either because, again, the purple posy is such a light color anyway. All right, so this one I did exactly like this one, and that's what it looks like when it's all completed. So now we need to die cut the pieces. So I'm going to bring my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine over, and our dies, and I'll show you how to fit them all on. Hopefully they work on this. Don't bounce around a lot on this magnetic plate. Okay, so they fit, they coordinate perfectly on here. Whether I'll be able to get the pot done the first time or not with it so close, we will see. Sometimes when the two pieces are very close like that, the magnets don't play nicely together. Okay, there's one other thing that we would want to die cut, and that, whoops, that one goes over here. And that's this funny looking branch here. And I die cut this from a piece of soft seafoam cardstock. And I did that ahead of time just to save time. Got something that looks like this. Okay, so now we've got almost all the pieces except for our sentiment. And perhaps maybe we should do that before we put everything together. I'll just move that for now. Let's take care of our sentiment. So I've got a small piece of crumb cake here. I'm going to treat it with the static remover, the embossing buddy. I'm going to stamp on the thanks sentiment. There's lots of different ones, but this is the smallest, so it fits well. I'm going to put that in the middle. I'm going to add the white embossing powder. There we go, and we'll heat emboss that. Okay, we'll bring back our Stampin' and Emboss, or sorry, our Cut and Emboss machine. Add that, and then we're going to use the small label. We have several labels on as part of this die set, which is a real point in its favor. There's 4 of them. There's long, and there's short and fat, and long and skinny. So it's really handy that way. You can use them for lots of different sentiments, not just with this set. And now we have everything we need to assemble the card. Okay, bring everything back here and grab our card front. Okay, so we're going to start with our big succulent and our pot, and they go together like this. So I'm just going to add some Stamp and Seal just in this bottom area here. Get my Stamp and Seal rolling there. And make sure it's where we want it. Right about like that. And stick it together. Okay, and then we want to add these two bits up behind, right about like this. So we're going to add some more seal up in this corner here. It's picked up. Okay, that's good. Now I want to add this over here right on top, so I'm going to use some Stampin' Dimensionals for that. I'll use a couple. Got good nails for that. I'm just going to add that over here, like so. And now we're ready to add this whole thing to our card front. So I'm going to use dimensionals for that. These are little foam dots. Some people like to call them pop dots. All right, so that's ready to go. I've got all the tops off. So I want to add the sentiment, so we want room for that. Okay, so we'll put it about here. There we go. And then we'll just, will we pop up the sentiment? No, I think we'll tuck that one under. So in order to do that, we're going to use glue dots. Okay, so I'm just going to put a couple of glue dots on the back here. Those are stubborn. Just tuck that right under there and right under there. Glue that straight. Yeah, okay. All right, so there is our card all completed using the whitewash technique. I'm going to be concentrating on the whitewash technique on my blog this week. Okay, thanks for joining me today, and we'll be on again next Monday at 11 o'clock. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.